In a video we made last year, called NASCAR Drivers' Dumbest Moments in History, we touched on an incident involving Mark Martin in the 1994 Goodies 250 at Bristol Motor Speedway. Martin received the white flag under caution in his number 60 Winn-Dixie machine. It was all but guaranteed that Mark Martin was going to receive the victory. However, Martin found a way to cost himself the victory by going down pit road one lap too soon. Martin thought that he was going to be driving towards victory lane, but instead ended up becoming a laughingstock of the NASCAR community for the weekend.
Dinner will be ready at 5.
This is known as not only one of the dumbest moments by drivers, but the biggest chokes in NASCAR history. This got me thinking, are there any other moments where NASCAR drivers choked as bad as Mark Martin did back in 1994? Although it would be extremely hard to top this moment, there are indeed many moments where drivers had their chance to win the race and even the championship, but had it slip right through their fingers by their own doing. Today, we dive into some of the biggest chokes in NASCAR history.
Shooting away. Uh-oh, he's slowing, isn't he?
150,000 people on their feet.
Junior is slowing, he's out of fuel. He's out of gas.
And as at Indy, the leader at turn 4 does not get to the flag. Perfect. The closer wins it.
Once again, where did he come from?
To begin this list, I felt like the best way to start would be to show a gaffe made by someone who had the championships, had the victories, but just like Mark Martin and others, they were not always perfect. As many are aware, my favorite driver as a kid was Jeff Gordon, and there was no better time to watch the 24 dominate than in 2007. During the transition of the Gen 4 car to the car of tomorrow, Jeff Gordon was collecting victories at all sorts of tracks: Talladega, Charlotte, Pocono, Phoenix, Darlington, just having an incredible season. However, there was one track that he should have won that many sometimes forget, and that was the 2007 race at Watkins Glen. Throughout the entire race, Jeff Gordon was the driver to beat on the 2.45-mile road course. But there was one driver that was staying with him the whole time, and that was Tony Stewart. These two were always battling at the road courses for victories, and it looked like history was going to repeat itself again, as in the final laps of the race, the two legends were duking it out for the lead. At first, it appeared that Jeff Gordon was pulling away from the 20 car at times when he needed to, but Stewart was finding a way to stay on his back bumper. All Stewart needed was for the so-called king of the road courses to make the rare mistake. Which, good luck with that, because we all know that Jeff Gordon wouldn't.
And Jeff Gordon has spun around with 2 laps to go, the leader.
Keep going. Come on. Keep digging hard. Right there, come on.
Unbelievable, turn 1 again.
With just 2 laps to go, Jeff Gordon did the unthinkable and wheel hopped going into turn 1, relegating his finish to 9th place after leading 51 of the 90 laps. Tony Stewart wound up winning his 4th race in the last 6 at the Glen. Fans didn't know this at the time, but Jeff Gordon would never win a road course race again in his career. In fact, this choke affected the driver so much that Watkins Glen became Gordon's worst statistical track of his career, proving to everyone that the king of the road courses was permanently dethroned. In our next story, we have one of the most embarrassing chokes to a start of a new partnership.
Driver, what in the hubcap are you doing? We are 7 laps into this race and somehow you are 12 laps down.
I'm sorry, crew chief. I just haven't been able to find the energy all day today.
Bring it on in. All right, driver, what seems to be the problem?
Well, I've been trying to get re-energized with this iced tea, but it's been harshing my mellow.
What the legit iced tea that tastes like pee?
Man, get this crud out of here. What you need is a real drink.
Wait, is that liquid death, but in iced tea form?
That's right, and they are now murdering the world of thirst with iced tea.
Well, what flavors do they have?
Liquid Death has multiple refreshing flavors to get your engine back to full speed, such as Dead Billionaire, Rest in Peace, Slaughterberry, Green Guillotine, Sweet Reaper, and my personal favorite, Blueberry Buzzsaw, only at exclusive stores.
Ooh, those flavors sound kind of scary.
Well, there's nothing to be scared about these killer cans because each Liquid Death iced tea ambushes your taste buds with 75% less sugar than the other brands.
Wait, does this mean I'm going to be the next Liquid Death Pro driver?
Nope. In fact, you are no longer in the race.
Wait, what?
Where'd you go? I'm here now, and I have never looked better. Make sure to go to liquiddeath.com and get your next drink of Liquid Death. Don't be scared, it's just iced tea.
Wow. Well, it could be worse. At least I'm not this guy.
If a driver dreams to win at any track in the United States, it would be between Daytona International Speedway or Indianapolis Motor Speedway. There have been 14 drivers that have ever won in both IndyCar and NASCAR, 2 drivers who have won at both the Daytona 500 and the Indianapolis 500. However, no one has ever won in both series at the iconic Indianapolis Motor Speedway. That statistic almost changed on July 26, 2009, when Juan Pablo Montoya was on the verge of doing the unthinkable. Montoya had won the Indy 500 back in 2000 and was considered one of the best racers of the 2000s due to his open car experience. By the end of 2006, Montoya decided to join the NASCAR scene and started off strong with a win in the Xfinity Series in Mexico City and in the Cup Series at Sonoma, California in 2007. 2009 came around and Montoya was showing that he was going to be a contender for a victory once again, but this time it was at Indianapolis Motor Speedway. Once Montoya took the lead at lap 5, no one could touch the Colombian as he was putting on a performance in his number 42 target machine. By lap 124, green flag pit stops were ongoing and Montoya had led up to 112 laps up to this point. All he had to do was come down pit road, take 4 tires and fuel, and he could coast to a victory and make racing history. Well, that is what should have happened.
42 car was too fast on pit road in 2 different segments.
never badmouth NASCAR, but if they do this to me, I'm going to kill them.
And we're hearing numbers that are just absolutely, just barely over the limit. They give him 5 miles an hour, and that puts it to 60 miles an hour, and he's just a couple of tenths over, but this is going to be devastating.
While coming up to speed, the 42 team got the call from NASCAR that Montoya was speeding on pit road. A penalty that shocked everyone, as Montoya had no reason to push his luck as he had a commanding lead up to this point. Montoya and the team pleaded to NASCAR, but it was clear that he went too fast, costing him the lead and eventually the race. In the end, Jimmy Johnson wound up winning the Brickyard 400, while Montoya finished 11th after leading 80% of the race. Losing at a crown jewel is definitely painful for a driver, as the Brickyard 400 was considered the second biggest event on the NASCAR schedule. But how about choking at the biggest crown jewel event on the schedule?
Cinderella Bane is going to win the Daytona.
Everyone remembers the 2011 Daytona 500 for one reason and one reason only. Trevor Bayne upset the whole field and won the Daytona 500 in only his second start in his Cup Series career. What many people may not remember is the 21 car's biggest rival during the end of the race, and that was the number 6 of David Reagan. David Reagan at this time was racing for Roush Fenway Racing. Reagan was meant to be the successor of Mark Martin in the number 6 machine. Unfortunately, his first 4 seasons, Reagan was not able to score one victory for the team, leaving the Roush Racing team desperate on getting the number 6 car back to victory lane. Well, it appeared that it was going to finally come in the 2011 Daytona 500, when David Reagan paired up with Trevor Bayne near the end of the race to be the strongest tandem draft group of the afternoon. With just 4 laps to go, David Reagan found himself in the first position when the caution came out for a multi-car accident, forcing the race to go into overtime. David Reagan's number 6 car certainly had the speed for the restarts, so all he had to do was get up to speed first and get in front of the 21 car before anyone else had a chance to pair up. Coming to the restart, the number 6 car had the jump start of a lifetime and it appeared that the execution was going to work perfectly. That was until NASCAR made the announcement that would break the heart of everyone at Roush Fenway Racing.
Green flag. Perfect. Good hesitation. Now if they can get hooked up and push. But the 6 is being black flagged. Passing before the start-finish line.
At first, it didn't appear that the 6 team did anything wrong on the restart, as Reagan accelerated in the restart zone and did not force anyone below the double yellow line. However, he made the mistake of switching lanes before the start-finish line, a rule that if violated, the team is penalized with a drive-through penalty, ending David Reagan's hopes of winning the 500. He was visibly furious at the call, but it was clear that he switched lanes before he was able to do so. If he waited just 4 seconds before moving down, then perhaps Reagan could have been the 2011 Daytona 500 champion. But instead, Reagan finished in the 14th position, while Trevor Bayne made history as becoming the youngest driver to win the Daytona 500. Luckily, as a consolation prize, David Reagan won later that year at Daytona, and also wound up winning for Front Row Motorsports a couple years later at Talladega, so at least he didn't let those two races slip. But for our next driver, he was not as fortunate, as he choked multiple times at racetracks where he was the true master. Marcus Ambrose was one of the most beloved underdogs in NASCAR during his time in his career. Being an ace at road courses, Ambrose was always the driver that you had to beat if you wanted to win. Unfortunately, there were a few times where the driver would just beat himself. In the Xfinity Series, Marcus Ambrose was the most dominant driver at Circuit Gilles Villeneuve. However, it took him 5 attempts before he was able to get into victory lane. In 2007, he was looking to win the race until Robby Gordon spun him on the final restart as retaliation in what has to be the craziest finish in NASCAR history. In 2008, he led the most laps in the event until he was caught speeding on pit road. And then the rain came just before he was able to retake the lead after leading 50% of the race up to that point. Even in 2010, he had a strong car until electrical issues ended his day early, leading to another heartbreak. However, none of those compared to the 2009 Napa Auto Parts 200 presented by Dodge mistake, where he led 60 of the 76 laps and was coming to the finish line with Carl Edwards close behind. All he had to do was execute the final 2 turns and he would finally clutch that elusive Montreal victory. Unfortunately, the driver who perfected road course racing was going to make his only mistake of the entire race.
Well, Carl Edwards is doing everything he can right here.
Marcus!
Big time curve. Here comes Edwards.
No! Can you believe this? Carl Edwards gets around him. Marcus makes one mistake all day, and it's going to cost him the win.
Edwards wound up winning, forcing Ambrose to wait 2 more years before he finally grabbed that checkered flag at the iconic racetrack. Now, I wish I could say that this track was his only Achilles heel as a road course racer, but there was one track where he was never able to hoist the trophy in victory lane, and that was at Sonoma Raceway. Unlike Watkins Glen in Montreal, Ambrose may have had the 2nd or 3rd best car, but never the best one. However, in 2010, that didn't seem to be the case, as the only person that could challenge Ambrose that whole race was the defending 4-time champion, Jimmie Johnson. Johnson tried to beat him on the track, on pit road, and even on restarts, but the champion couldn't beat the Tasmanian Devil. In a late race caution, it looked like Johnson had one more shot at Marcos Ambrose, but as long as Ambrose kept his momentum, nothing was going to stop him.
More aggressive in this situation, only because I think the 40.
What's going on here?
Ambrose stopped on the track. Yeah. Unless he's lost a gear.
He just got a gift. He just said, check it out, said you just got the gift for the day. That's it. It looks like Marcus was not allowed to go back to his spot.
Yeah.
So that is absolutely huge.
In what could only be described as a blunder, Ambrose shut the engine off, going up the hill of the racetrack to conserve fuel. What confused everyone was that the team pitted the car only 20 laps prior, meaning that they were more than good to go on saving fuel. Ambrose had 6 cars pass him before he could start the car back up, resulting in him losing those spots. As the commentator said, Jimmie Johnson got the gift of the day as he went on to win, while Ambrose sat with a 6th place finish, and a devastating loss that should have never happened. The only defense I can give Marcos for this incident is that his team told him to conserve fuel, so a tiny bit of blame should fall on the communication. However, in the next case, no one was to blame except for the driver himself. We're going to stay at the same racetrack, but instead of talking about the most consistent road course ringer, we're going to talk about the most chaotic driver. We have talked extensively on the nature of Robby Gordon behind the wheel of a NASCAR. He had his moments in the spotlight, however, not all of those moments were for the right reason. In 2001, Robby Gordon was on a part-time schedule after being replaced in the number 4 car for Morgan McLaurin Motorsports after the 5th race of the season. Luckily, Gordon signed a deal with Waltrip Motorsports in the number 7 car at his most beloved racetrack, Sonoma Raceway. Robby Gordon definitely showed some speed behind the wheel of the number 7 car early in the race, but thanks to some pit strategy and mistakes by Jeff Gordon, never mind, he tended to make a lot of mistakes I guess, Robby found himself in the lead with less than 30 laps to go. Even though he had Tony Stewart close behind him on the track, Robby Gordon seemed like he had a great shot of pulling off the upset of the year in his 6th start of the season. There was only one issue. Kevin Harvick came onto pit road for 4 tires, but was held for 15 seconds for speeding on pit road. Harvick came out of pit road side by side with Robby Gordon, leading to a big issue for the 7 team. Since the 29 team had fresher tires than the leader, Harvick could get more aggressive on getting his lap back. Now for most drivers, they would allow the driver to go by as they would not be a threat for the victory. But Robby Gordon was not a typical driver. Robby held up the 29 car for as much as he could to ensure that Harvick stayed a lap down. With just 11 to go, Robby stopped focusing on the win and only on the 29 car. That's when in turn 7, Robby made a huge mistake.
Beating and banging, Stewart saw it happening. And Tony Stewart had the momentum.
As Darrell Waltrip put it, Robby Gordon was so worried about a lap car and let Tony Stewart take the lead, ending his chances of capturing his first win in his home state. Robby Gordon would eventually get his first win later that season at Loudon under some dubious circumstances, but I'm sure that Robby Gordon would prefer that his first win came at Sonoma. It was all thanks to focusing on the wrong driver. But how about losing your focus entirely and costing the whole team a championship? Surely that hasn't happened before. We laughed at Tyler Reddick for thinking that the race was over at Homestead Miami Speedway. We laughed at Mark Martin when he cost himself the win by going down pit road 1 lap early. However, no one was even smiling when Trevor Hudleston thought the race was over, an error that cost his teammate the championship. The ARCA Menards West Series is a lower division in racing that has been a staple in motorsports for decades. Some of the most noticeable champions from this series include Kevin Harvick, Todd Gilliland, and Jesse Love, to name a few. But we're going to focus on the latter driver for his 2nd championship. In 2021, both Jake Drew and Jesse Love were having a fierce battle for the championship. In the last race at Phoenix Raceway, 6 drivers mathematically had a shot to winning the championship, but by the end of the race, it was just the number 9 of Jake Drew for Sunrise Ford Racing going against the number 16 of Jesse Love for McAnally Racing. As the laps winded down, it appeared that Jake Drew was going to secure the championship, as all he needed to do was be ahead of Love by 4 positions and the championship was his. As the white flag flew, it seemed like it was all but guaranteed that Jake Drew was going to win since Jesse Love was trying to stay in front of Ty Gibbs to stay on the lead lap. The checkered flag flew and Ty Gibbs had completed the race. But the race was not over for everyone else quite yet.
There's Jake in the number 9. He's got Parker Chase directly behind him. That is the position that could cost Jake Drew that championship. Here comes Parker Chase making a run at it on the final lap. Daniel Dye in the mix as well. He's not going to make it happen. Jake Drew across the start-finish line. He's going to clinch the West Series championship. Wait a minute. Let's take a look at the points. Somewhere on that final lap, Jesse Love found a position. It's tied atop the leaderboard. Your champion will be Jesse Love in the 16 car.
As Jesse Love took the white flag, he and the number 6 car of Trevor Hudleston for Sunrise Ford Racing were just barely in front of the 18 car when Ty Gibbs took the checkered flag. Trevor Hudleston mistaking the checkered in the air for himself and not the car behind, instinctively backing off thinking that the race was over. This allowed Jesse Love to make the pass around the slowing number 6 car, putting himself in the position he needed to secure the championship. Meanwhile, Jake Drew would be told the tragic news that he lost the championship in a tiebreaker due to his own teammate. Drew was devastated by the result, and Trevor Hudleston was let go from Sunrise Ford Racing after this event. Jake did wind up winning the championship the following year in what would be the team's last year in racing, so at least the team ended on top, but still a shame that they let one get away the year prior. But at least they were able to redeem themselves at Phoenix. As for this next driver, Phoenix was where it all fell apart in 2010. If you ask current NASCAR fans who is considered the biggest choke artist in the Cup Series, Denny Hamlin's name is most people's answers. Denny Hamlin is by no means a mediocre driver. In fact, he's probably one of the better drivers to race in the sport for the last 25 years. He has collected over 50 victories, including 3 Daytona 500 wins, and even 4 Final Four appearances. But unfortunately, with all that success has come 0 championships for the Florida native, which is shocking to say, as in his first full-time season in the Cup Series, Denny Hamlin finished 3rd in the championship standings. However, at the end of the 2010 season, many started to realize that perhaps the driver was not quite ready to handle the pressure of racing for the championship when it mattered the most. In the penultimate race of the 2010 season, Denny Hamlin was looking to become the first driver in 4 years to dethrone the dominant duo of Jimmie Johnson and Chad Knaus. Denny secured the win in the prior race at Texas and had led over 190 laps in the race at Phoenix. Near the end of the race, Carl Edwards was able to pass the 11 car for the lead with less than 50 laps to go. But that was alright, as Hamlin's primary focus was to stay in front of the 48 car. There was a slight problem though. Denny Hamlin's crew chief of Mike Ford firmly believed that Hamlin was not going to be able to make it to the end of the race, as he feared that the car was short on fuel. With just 14 laps to go, Hamlin made the big sacrifice and went down pit road to get tires and fuel. Now, based on most calculations, everyone should have been in the same fuel situation as the 11 car, including Jimmie Johnson. So with the 11 team being so good on fuel mileage that season, everyone should have came in within the next couple of laps. But as we saw the laps wind down, oh so many cars were able to go the distance, including the 48 car, where he managed to finish 5th and Hamlin finished 12th. Heartbreak filled the 11 team as they knew they made a huge miscalculation on the fuel strategy. Their comfortable points lead over the 48 car was reduced to a mere 15 points, the equivalent to about 3 positions. Denny Hamlin was absolutely seething in his post-race interview as he felt like his championship opportunity was left open for someone to take. And at the final race at Homestead, that slight opening turned into a 5-time championship.
And it involves Hamlin! The championship points leader goes around, and can he save it? Caution is out. He keeps it off the wall.
Okay, we're gonna need 4 tires. Come on around.
It took 2 bad races for Hamlin to choke his 2010 championship hopes, but at least he stayed competitive all the way to the bitter end. The same couldn't be said for the championship leader 31 years prior, where a future champion took their 187-point lead over second place and lost it in 7 races. Darrell Waltrip was one of the best drivers in the 1980s, as he was able to score 3 championships within a span of 5 years. It was no surprise that he was able to accomplish this, as his team owner was Junior Johnson, considered to many as one of the best team owners in the early days of NASCAR. Although 3 championships is nothing to scoff at, many believe that DW should have actually matched Jeff Gordon with 4 championships and won his first championship in the late 70s with Dyegard Motorsports. That season was the iconic 1979 season, the one that put NASCAR on the map and Richard Petty's 7th and final championship. What many don't remember in 1979 was that the most dominant driver throughout the entire season was Darrell Waltrip. DW scored 7 victories in a span of 22 races, nearly 30% of the time in victory lane. It wasn't just at the short tracks either, as Darrell was able to win at some of NASCAR's most prestigious tracks, including Darlington, Charlotte, Talladega, and Bristol. Richard Petty had a couple of victories as well, but nowhere close to the driver they called Jaws. By the 24th race, it seemed like a miracle was needed if Petty was ever going to catch back up to be a contender for the 1979 championship. But instead of a miracle, a nightmare happened for the 88 team. 25th race of the season, Richard Petty scores his 4th win of the season as Waltrip wrecks in the early stages of the race, finishing 29th. 26th race, Waltrip looks to have a strong race in the early stages, leading 184 laps, but falls apart in the end with an 11th place finish, 39 laps down. 28th race, Darrell looks to have another strong car, again leading 25% of the race, but suffers more issues near the end of the event and winds up 13th, 24 laps down. By the penultimate race, Darrell Waltrip's once 187-point lead was reduced to a mere 2 points, meaning that his only chance of dethroning the king was to finish in front of him at the last race of the season. Darrell Waltrip finished 8th at Ontario, while Richard Petty finished 5th. The dominant season that Waltrip had was overshadowed by a list of mistakes where the Dygaard Racing team needed to stay consistent. Luckily, both Darrell Waltrip and Dygaard Racing experienced championship in the early part of the 80s. However, many feel like 1979 was their best showing, as their average finish was an astounding 7.0. However, if you ask me what the worst choke is for a race team, driver, and owner, it has to involve the team where DW experienced his only championships in the sport, and their driver was arguably the most popular driver to step foot on the NASCAR scene. It's one of the most talked about seasons in NASCAR history, and to this day, people are still amazed by how close the championship battle came between 6 drivers, most noticeably due to the fact that by all means, Bill Elliott and Junior Johnson Associates should have won the championship with flying colors. In fact, in the first 5 races of the 1992 season, Bill Elliott won 4 of them. It wasn't a fluke either, as Junior Johnson had developed a team that was constantly a championship contender. But now that he had the superstar Bill Elliott running his equipment, with Budweiser being their primary sponsor, it would take a lot for anyone to compete against the team. Sure, you had Davey Allison and Robert Yates Racing doing everything they could to keep up with the 11 car, but it was becoming so demanding for the team that Davey Allison was pushing his body to the absolute limit just to stay as a contender. Don't believe me? During the 1992 season, Allison suffered a bruised shoulder from a wreck at Bristol, a rib injury from a crash at Martinsville, a concussion and bruised lung from a crash at the All-Star race, in which he won, and a plethora of injuries from his terrifying crash at Pocono. Although the tenacity from the 28 team was remarkable, the 11 team was starting to pull away from the team for the championship, as by the 23rd race of the season, Bill Elliott had a 154-point lead over Allison and 278 points over the eventual champion of Alan Kulwicki. So how did they lose that large of a point lead in just 5 races? Simply by showing us the worst choking stretch of a NASCAR team in history.
Are we under caution? You ain't gonna believe it, folks. Yeah. 11 car blew up.
Here's how the points would shake out. Elliott is running 26th and would have 35.75. Allison is 12th, would have 35.05.
Well, Neil, it's anything but good. Indeed, it is a track bar problem. That's a bar that runs from the left side of the car to the right side of the car and locates the rear end. Without it, the car itself just rolls around on top of the tires. There's a bracket that holds the thing. That's
spraying water through the grill and into the cooling system.
Junior's, boy, look at that thing. It's cut a cylinder down. You know, it must have ran so hot it blew a head gasket or something. But
the following 4 out of 5 races, Bill Elliott and the 11 team went from a dominant championship lead to now sitting 3rd in the points behind Davey Allison and Alan Kulwicki heading into the last race. A complete meltdown by the whole team, but rest assured that they had a fast car for the final event. If they wanted to win the event, the team would not only have to finish in front of both the 7 and 28 car, but they would more than likely have to lead the most laps to secure the championship. While past the halfway point, everything was going to plan for the team as Davey Allison's luck finally fell short due to a crash from a lap car. And Alan Kulwicki was running near the front, but the 11 car was faster. All Tim Brewer, the crew chief on top of the 11 pit box, had to calculate the numbers of laps led perfectly, and they will be the 1992 champions. But then, the unthinkable happened. Tim Brewer brought the 11 car down pit road one lap too soon, leading to the 94 car of Terry Labonte to lead lap 315, the one lap that the 11 team needed to score the championship. Did Tim Brewer lose track of the other cars on the track? Did Bill Elliott allow Alan Kulwicki to lead one lap too soon around lap 210? Those questions still loom, but one thing was for certain: Alan Kulwicki secured the most laps led from these mistakes by just one lap, making it the biggest lapse of judgment by one of the top race teams in NASCAR. Kulwicki wound up winning the championship that day, while Bill Elliott won the race but came up short on the championship. It would be Elliott's closest chance to ever winning a championship again. Tim Brewer was let go from Junior Johnson Associates after this gaffe, leading the crew chief to never see victory lane again all the way up to his retirement in 2004. As for Junior Johnson Associates, their legendary dominance over the sport seemed to be halted after this mistake, as the team never came close to a championship again and shut down after the 1995 season, making this possibly the worst choke in NASCAR history.